Here's Andrew Brennan.
Just before midnight on Wednesday, a final hurrah at Montreal bars. The doors are now shuttered. Bars and restaurants are quiet and tearing down terraces. Red zone restrictions are now in effect in the greater Montreal area and around Quebec City and beyond. Bars and brasseries are closed. Restaurants open only for takeout. Theaters and cinemas also shut down. Demonstrations, if they happen, require masks and physical distancing. Private gatherings are also banned, people being asked to simply stay home.
I know we've made some tough decisions in recent days, but they are lives in danger, and fighting the virus must remain our top priority.
But there are concerns about police being able to obtain telewarrants to crack down on gatherings, with fines up to $1,000, $1,500 if you add in all the fees. One criminal lawyer says he thinks the measures go too far and might not stand up in court.
It's very heavy-handed. The house, the person where he lives, and where he has all his private matters is being invaded.
Some Montrealers are also concerned about who police might decide to ticket, given the documented history of racial profiling in the city.
We're just calling on the use of fairness and discretion and bias-free policing, so we'll have to wait and see what happens.
Beyond the legal and ethical concerns for having police enter people's homes using a telewarrant, there's also questions on how they'll respond to anti-mask protests, which would defy the red zone rules for having demonstrations without masks and no physical distancing. Now, the mayor's office confirms a permit for one such protest set for later this month has already been denied. Andrew Brennan, CTV News.
Now, a high school teacher in Montreal North has used the N-word during a history class. The teacher says he meant no harm, but students say this isn't the first time. Andrew Brennan reports.
This is one of several occasions a history teacher at Robert Bourassa High School in Montreal North was recorded saying the N-word in an online class. The online lesson was recorded by a student and shared on social media, including by Marlene Desir.
I was really shocked. I was also feelings of disgust. I was appalled. I was angry. I was not pleased by seeing this at all.
Her sister Pauline was taught by Vincent Riette 2 years ago.
It was a word that he had no problem using in any class, really. I remember it was my first day in the Sec 4 history class with him, and he was like, I can say whatever I want, and you guys can complain however you guys want to like la direction or anything, and I'll still be here.
This case comes on the heels of a controversy at the University of Ottawa, where a professor was suspended for using the N-word in a lecture about oppression and language. In the videos from the high school teacher, Riette recites a well-known Québécois comedy skit and tells his class he is using the word in a historical context, so he's comfortable doing so. Chakoy says when he was her teacher, she witnessed other incidents that made students uncomfortable, including one case with the girl who was a Jehovah's Witness.
When he just started bashing her in front of the whole class, she cried and she left the class crying. And no one ever did anything about it.
We reached out to the teacher but did not hear back. The service center declined our request for an interview, but in a statement says it and the school are well aware of the matter and are taking action, but would not elaborate. Andrew Brennan, CTV News. For many teens, it's a question of getting with the times.
I asked myself a couple of questions about today's society, and I really think that girls shouldn't be sexualized by what they wear or how they wear. So I decided to wear a skirt to kind of symbolize the movement.
A movement that has hit several schools in the Montreal area where there are uniforms and dress code regulations. In response and as protest, boys are wearing skirts and girls are using their bodies to send a message.
Young girls are just so sexualized, and they're told, you can't wear your skirt that short, and it's because it's distracting boys. So that's why I wrote on my leg, it says, don't protect your daughters, educate your sons, because I think it speaks for itself.
In Laval, students organized to send a similar message.
It started off as my class. We were about 15 guys that said, okay, let's do it. We'll make it a movement. And then a couple other kids from other classes did it too.
And for students who are non-binary, gender dress codes have extra significance.
I already wear skirts at home, and I just like to wear skirts at school, but I don't feel safe and comfortable in my school. But basically, people like Giuseppe and his friends, they made me feel safer and comfortable in my own skin.
These teens hope their actions will help lead to more discussions with teachers and school administrators and some permanent change.
We'll do it as many times as we need to do it. I mean, our school is already open to a discussion of like remaking the uniform, rethinking the barriers of what is male and female.
Despite the flouting of guidelines, so far, no reprisals. To get past what's worn on the surface and value people for who they are, regardless of gender. Andrew Brennan, CTV News.
I am very proud to be the mayor at this point in time to present this strategy.
A strategy for reconciliation, Indigenous leaders hope, will pave a way forward from a painful past and present.
Racism and discrimination towards First Nations people is a reality, is a sad reality in Quebec. And the tragic death of our sister Joyce Echaquan on September 28th at the Joliette Hospital is a sad reminder.
Montreal's plan addresses recommendations from several commissions and includes 125 commitments for the next 5 years, such as supporting the urban Indigenous community, showcasing Indigenous culture and history, hiring more Indigenous personnel within city staff and the police force, and bolstering police sensitivity training to address systemic bias. It's being called an important first step and a model other cities should follow.
We are being looked at by the rest of Canada saying, wow, Montreal's doing a great job around reconciliation. It is a symbol, but it is also more than a symbol.
The city is also looking to address homelessness. According to government data, First Nations and Inuit peoples make up a disproportionate number of the homeless in the city. Part of the plan involves a pilot project with first responders trained to deal with people in crisis instead of calling the police. But the criteria for when they would actually be deployed remains unclear.
What we're saying in the strategy is, let's use what works. We know what are the good conditions for this to work.
And while many goals of the strategy are vague, Indigenous groups say it's a good starting point.
It's certainly a strong message, which is going along with a very clear willingness to move into action.
This framework gives us a backbone. It gives us something to go and negotiate with. And it also gives us some kind of a legacy document where the education will be done by the institutions themselves.
Hoping to make Montreal more inclusive for all. Andrew Brennan, CTV News. A warm meal after a cold night. This tent city has only grown since first appearing in August, from a dozen tents to now over 100. Some say they're here from losing their jobs because of the pandemic.
Problems were related to work because of the COVID-19, and rent and things like that are so expensive, so we need to have help.
Drop-offs of clothes, food, and generators are frequent here as people offer what they can.
The cold is coming in faster than we thought, so we decided to come out and feed them and clothe them. We have tons of clothes, jackets that we're giving to them.
Governments at all levels are stepping up their help, adding hundreds of beds for the winter and even renting out a downtown hotel at Place du Puy. The opposition at City Hall says it's a good start, but calls it short-sighted.
At least make a 12-month plan, the first thing. And then after that, work on a plan, and they should already be working on a plan now for after the 31st of March, because all the investment that was announced yesterday will be closed on the 31st of March.
The Port of Montreal has agreed to allow a warming station nearby, and while the mayor says she doesn't want to force anyone from the camp, The city will intervene if anyone's health is in jeopardy, but many of the people that are here say they don't plan to use any of the overnight accommodations being offered.
I like better to be here, and a lot of people don't want to move out from here. A lot.
He says he'd rather be offered subsidized housing so he can live on his own, something Mayor Valérie Plante has been pushing for, but shelters say it's not for everyone.
We can't just, open up an apartment building and put everybody in. That's not going to solve the problem because people have to want to go someplace as well. So we have to be able to meet their needs and their expectations.
The province says discussions are ongoing for more permanent housing solutions, but with winter coming, an immediate response is needed now. Andrew Brennan, CTV News. Back to school is in the air, but some worry the coronavirus could be as well.
I am so worried.
Heidi Ross of St. Sever says her time as an architectural interior designer has her worried as a parent. Old schools with poor ventilation could be dangerous.
One of the things that my daughter told us, part of the anxiety of her friends going back to school, is she actually said it's like we're sitting ducks, Mom.
This professor and building engineer says it's still too early to know if the virus spreads by staying in the air as an aerosol, but many school buildings aren't optimal for air circulation.
A lot of the buildings that were built, let's say 70s or even 80s, even early 90s, wouldn't meet the ventilation requirements that we have today before COVID. So it is potentially an issue.
The American Society of Heating, Refrigerating, and Air Conditioning Engineers has developed a task force to provide guidelines for building managers on best practices in COVID-19.
And it is a concern. So that's why they created that document, and it's a guide and a checklist that they can use.
A spokesperson for the English Montreal School Board says it regularly maintains school ventilation systems.
They're kept up to date and up to speed on a very regular basis. So we're going to continue that process right now. Early on in the school year, of course, they'll be able to open windows in the classes. So that'll even help more with terms of air circulation.
Many Quebec schools are receiving a failing grade when it comes to infrastructure. The latest 10-year infrastructure plan from the government shows over half are in bad or very bad shape. It's why when announcing nearly $2 billion in funding to speed up school infrastructure projects, that the education minister said it would be faster and cheaper to demolish many of these schools and rebuild them from scratch. But Ross says, as a parent, she feels unsafe sending kids back to the schools that we do have.
We're harming our children for what? Because they have to go to school? Yes, they have to go to school, but they can also wait a year for this to get settled.
And take classes online, which Ross says will help keep them learning and safe. Andrew Brennan, CTV News.